Why Latin America mistrusts the United States. The mistrust toward the United States remains strong across parts of Latin America even today. The United States is the region's largest trading partner. It is a major source of investment, and it is home to millions of Latin American immigrants. Yet, despite these strong ties, mistrust persists. This matters because these perceptions still influence diplomacy, trade, and public opinion. To understand why, we need to look at history, geopolitics, and policy decisions that continue to shape perceptions. My name is Dr. Padilla, and welcome to Policy and Development in the Americas, where we explore and help you better understand public policy, economics, and some of the developments going on across the Western Hemisphere. If you enjoy this type of content, give this episode a like, share it, and subscribe to the channel. This channel focuses on data, historical content, and non-partisan analysis. In 1823, the United States announced the Monroe Doctrine, warning European powers against interference in the Western Hemisphere. While originally framed as protection, many Latin American countries later interpreted this doctrine as justification for U.S. influence. Throughout the early 20th century, the United States intervened in Cuba, Nicaragua, Haiti, and the Dominican Republic. These interventions were often justified as protecting stability or U.S. interests. However, they also contributed to long-term skepticism. These early interventions helped shape perceptions that would later intensify during the Cold War. U.S. foreign policy focused on preventing the spread of communism, although that wasn't always the case. This led to involvement across Latin America. One of the most cited examples occurred in Guatemala in 1954 when President Jacobo Arbenz was overthrown with support from the CIA. This event became a defining moment in how U.S. involvement in the region was perceived. Following the 1954 coup, Guatemala entered a prolonged period of political instability that eventually developed into an internal armed conflict lasting from 1960 to 1996. During this period, Guatemala experienced military rule, insurgency movements, and widespread violence. More than 200,000 people were killed or disappeared during the conflict. This led to some of the with the blessing of the government of the United States. Critics argue that U.S. support for successive governments during portions of this period contributed to perceptions of alignment with repressive regimes. Supporters argued that U.S. policy reflected Cold War geopolitical concerns. However, Guatemalans ended up paying the price. Guatemala became one of the most significant examples shaping perceptions of U.S. policy in the region. Similar concerns arose elsewhere. Chile after 1973, Argentina during military rule, El Salvador during civil conflict, Nicaragua during the Contra War. In these cases, critics argue that U.S. policy prioritized geopolitical alignment over democratic governance. Supporters argue that decisions were shaped by Cold War realities. These events reinforced a broader perception that geopolitical priorities sometimes outweigh democratic principles. One of the most controversial Cold War initiatives was Operation Condor. Operation Condor was a coordinated effort among South American military governments in the 1970s. Countries involved included Chile, Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay, Bolivia, and Brazil. These governments coordinated intelligence sharing and security operations against political opponents. The classified documents later revealed that U.S. officials were aware of Operation Condor and maintained communication with participating governments. The extent of direct U.S. involvement remains debated. However, awareness of these operations contributed to perceptions of alignment with repressive governments. Another controversial episode occurred again in Guatemala between 1946 and 1948. During this period, U.S. researchers conducted medical experiments involving soldiers, prisoners, and psychiatric patients. Approximately 5,000 individuals were involved. Around 1,300 individuals were deliberately infected with sexually transmitted infections without informed consent. Not all infected individuals received adequate treatment. The experiment remained largely unknown until 2010. The U.S. government later issued a formal apology to Guatemala. This episode remains one of the most controversial events shaping mistrust. Despite mistrust of U.S. government policy, many Latin Americans express strong affinity towards American society. Millions of Latin Americans live in the United States. Remittances support millions of families across the region. Additionally, many American citizens and organizations conduct charity and development work throughout Latin America. These efforts include medical missions, educational programs, disaster relief, and community development projects. These efforts have helped build goodwill towards American society. This creates a paradox: distrust towards U.S. government policy, but strong affinity towards American society and its people. Mistrust persists because historical memory remains influential. World events will shape perceptions, and political disagreements continue. At the same time, cooperation continues as well. The United States remains one of the region's most important economic partners. This creates a complex relationship shaped by both cooperation and mistrust. The relationship between Latin America and the United States cannot be understood through a single lens. It includes cooperation, disagreement, shared interest, and historical tensions. These dynamics continue to shape perception across the region today. Latin American mistrust of the United States is shaped by history, geopolitics, and policy decisions. This relationship is not simply positive or negative. It is complex. It reflects both cooperation and disagreement, sometimes at the same time. But perhaps the most important question is this: is Latin America's mistrust of the United States primarily shaped by history or by more recent policies? And how much of that mistrust still influences decisions today? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And remember that it is not about believing what we want to believe. It is about knowing what we need to know. I'll see you next week.